Well, hello and welcome back to my wood shop here in the big woods of northwest Missouri. Today we're going to be looking at part 6 of our bunk bed build, and we're going to be focusing today on the railings that connect the headboard and the footboard. So thank you again for coming along, and we'll get started.
We can see where we're at with our bunk bed build, how we've come along. Since the last time we were together, I got the headboards and the footboards all glued up and put together. If you're interested in how I built those, just refer back to some of my former videos, parts 3 and 4 in particular, and I went into some detail about how I put this together. So please refer back to those videos, and you can find those on my channel. Now, one thing I didn't cover last time we were together was how I used a peg tenon to join these. So let me just go over that real quickly with you. You'll remember that the last time we were together, I took some time to talk a little bit about the wedged tenon, didn't I? And how that keyed or that wedged tenon works in our assembly. What a peg tenon is a tenon that goes through the joint, just like this rail here goes into this with about 1.5 inches or so sticking into the mortise. And then what the peg does, it just goes through that unit and locks it in. Okay, just goes through it and locks it in. That's exactly what I did. I put one on the top rail and locked that in, and 2 on the bottom rail and locked that one in. And then I'm going to take a sharp chisel when I'm done and just going to pare those off nice and smooth and even to get a real nice finish. Another thing I did was I went ahead and put this at 90 degrees to my grain. So that was pretty cool. So my grain, you can see, goes up and down here. So I just turned that when I put that in there at 90 degrees to make that fit. And that really turned out nice. It turned out to look very nice. Okay, so today what I'm working on is, you can see I've got one of the rails already in the bed here. So I cut this on the table saw here with a crosscut sled and then finished it up with a chisel. And I wanted these to fit so they were snug, okay, but not so snug that I couldn't take them apart easily, and not so loose that they were sloppy. Remember, when I get this all in, this is going to have a wedge in here. It's going to lock that in tight. So that's a little bit about where we're at today. I'm going to bring you over to the workbench and show you how I cut these out. Today we're going to continue our bunk bed build. You can see here I'm just working on this tenon here a little bit, getting some of these chips out. I'll come back to that here in just a moment. Let me do a little bit of review since the last time we were together. You'll remember that the last time we were together, I was talking a lot about this keyed tenon. This is a keyed tenon or a wedge tenon, and I went into great detail about that and the age of it, so I won't repeat myself on it. So what I'm doing today is fitting the railings to the bed. Okay, so the total length of the railing is 84.5. Okay, and then from shoulder to shoulder is like 76.5. So an average mattress is about 75 inches long. So this is going to give me about 3/4 of an inch at each end. So it's going to give me a little room there to put blankets in or whatever you want to put. So what I'm doing today is I took this over to the crosscut sled and I cut all my shoulders out, and then you can see I just sort of nibble that back, and then I'm just taking a chisel and just ever so lightly just knocking out those pieces. And see, I can even do that without a mallet. Just knock those pieces out. Okay. When I get that roughed out, then what I'll do, I'll smooth that out a little bit. Then I'll take I've got a 610 rabbiting plane that works really good for this, and I'll give that a couple strokes. And when I do, that will just clean up nicely. I took a little time and I set this tenon up so that when I got this cut, I'd get a nice snug fit. One thing, that this is about 1/4 inch deep all the way around, and I wanted these ends to be a 1/2 inch set in.
So I came back with a saw and just sawed that off and just evened that up a bit. And that turned out pretty good. I mean, that was a good way to do it. It takes a little bit more work to do it that way. I could get them all cut and go back and set that again, but really with a handsaw, I mark it, I saw it, take a sharp chisel, I even it out, and it turned out real good. I'll show you here in just a moment just how good that turned out. And what I did was I took this 1.25" by 5.25" board that I have. I took it over to the crosscut sled, put it on the crosscut sled, cut out my shoulders, and then just nibbled away at the board here. So then I can just take a sharp chisel here and just finish that up. You can see here I've just got that so that I'm getting down here to the grooves. All right. So that came out pretty well. Let me just mention a couple things if I could about that. This is a long board and it was a bit hard to hold on my crosscut sled. So I think when I do this again, I'm gonna get some kind of fast clamp that I can clamp it down tight so I don't sit there and hold it. Turned out okay. It was just a lot of effort to sit here and hold this board and to get it down just right. But once I get it all cut, you can see here, I mean, that came out just real nice on those edges there. And on the sides here, I cut those a 1/4 inch deep as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back on those and I'm going to go ahead and cut that down just a little bit more on that edge there, you can see. All right. When I'm done, I want these shoulders to be about 1.5 inches. Excuse me, about 1/2 inch in each way. That's what I want those. But you can see how that really is cleaning up pretty well. And just a little bit of work with the chisel there and you can get those looking pretty good. There we go. Then I'm going to take my 610. Nice little 610 plane. It's a rabbiting plane, so it cuts to the edge there. And I've got that adjusted out. I might just adjust that a little bit deeper on it. A little deeper maybe. All right, you can see I'm chiseling all those little pieces off of there. I sped this up so you didn't have to watch each of my strokes, but it turned out pretty good. I think the thing I had to be most careful about was to make sure that when I went across that grain, I cut my plane a little bit of an angle. Just to give me a slicing action. Otherwise, that soft pine would tend to fuzz up on me a little bit, tear out somewhat. But, you know, as long as I took my time and worked it, it worked out good. Notice I also took a block with some sandpaper, and then I finished smoothing that out. Very careful that very important that you do your layout very carefully, and so I took a little time, a little care, make sure that I got a good layout. You can see here how I worked on this. I marked the ends, I came back and then marked it down. That's to give me a good mark here for my saw so that I can keep it lined up and keep that just as square as possible to the surface. So I took a little time with my layout. By the way, I used that little square that I purchased here recently, and boy, does it ever work good. It's called a jointery square, and it really works good. I've had some good success with it. All right, once I got it laid out, then I went ahead and I was able to take my handsaw and just saw that. Now, I only had a 10-point saw. It'd been better if I had a little bit finer saw. But you know what? It worked okay. And it would have been better if I had a rip saw. This was a crosscut saw. But I was able to make it work just fine. I wanted to make sure that I left my mark when I was sawing. It's hard to see from that angle, but if you look closely there, you'll see that I've got a little pencil mark still showing. Tried to keep watching to make sure I was staying vertical with it as well. And then now I took a little back saw that I have, actually a little carcass saw, tenon saw, and I just slice those edges off. And that really did work a lot better. It was thin and smooth and tended to work real good. Once I got them all done and I got the edges done, I took a chisel, finished it off with the chisel, made sure they were square. I even took a little hand plane to part of it and just made sure I was good and square. Double checked my square on it, on those sides. Make sure I was square with the surface. Now, this is going to show, and so it is important that it is square and nice and it's not all marred up. This will show. So I want to take a little pains with that to make sure it was just right. But a good sharp chisel and a little care, a little patience, a little time. It's amazing what you can accomplish with some good hand tools. So it reminds me, it makes me think of the old craftsmen of days past. Limited tools, but boy did they ever do some good work. They did some beautiful work. To this day we still marvel at the type of work they did. Now, to get a good finish, I just took a piece of sandpaper on a block and just wanted to even it off a little bit. I'll probably do a little more finishing to these. I've got to cut my little mortise in that, my little angled mortise here. There, I'm checking it. My little woodpecker square. It's looking pretty good overall. So yeah, that came out good. I'm very satisfied with that. Now the test. So I took that same jig I made for my wedged tenon, wedge mortise and tenon, my through tenon, and I'm going to check it, each one of these, to make sure I've got a good fit. This needs to go on so that it's snug. I want it snug, but I don't want it so tight that it binds up on me. There it goes, and I think it's going to fit just right. See, I've got a little bit of friction there. I may need to take a little bit more of that off. After I ran it through a couple of times, it's amazing how good that did. There it goes. I think it's going to fit just fine on there now. Yeah, and notice here I'm checking too. I don't want too big a gap around the outside of this. I want, when I'm all said and done, I want it to have a nice fit, a nice look. That's what I'm going for. Years to come, I want this to maintain itself. Okay, so you can see we finished that up. Here's the overall overview, I guess you would say, cap it all together. I ran those through and it fit good. So I've got that first headboard and footboard together. Of course, I've got to do some finish up on it. And like I said, cut my mortise and my wedge and so forth on it. I've got work to do on this, but that was fun. Overall, I've had a good time with this project. Thank you for coming along with me. And if you're deciding to build with me, just let me know if you need any more of the measurements or anything like that, and I'll be glad to supply those to you. Leave it in the comment section. Again, thanks for coming along. If you like what you're seeing, please give me a thumbs up, ring the bell, and subscribe to the channel. That helps out a lot. So it's been fun having you along with us. So next time we're going to be to the next step. So I get all this together, and that's going to be the finishing touches before I put the finish on it. So till we meet again, happy chips.